Good afternoon, and thank you, Chair Moore and the members of the task force. I direct the Environmental Law and Justice Clinic, a pro bono legal service provider within Golden Gate University School of Law, which was founded on the explicit recognition that race matters when it comes to pollution and green amenities. As the task force has recognized in including environmental racism as a topic of study, it is an important aspect of reparation because environmental degradation that harms Black Americans is but an aspect of systemic racism that has pervaded their lives from womb to grave. My testimony today will focus on Bayview Hunters Point in San Francisco, which I will refer to either as Bayview or Hunters Point, to illustrate the systemic nature of environmental injustice. I'm humbled because Vice Chair Dr. Brown knows the subject better than I. Specifically, I will talk about the de jure segregation of Bayview and the intensification of that segregation, such that Bayview, which is one of the most polluted areas in the nation, was 72% Black in 1970. I will conclude by discussing recent urban developments, which in conjunction with other complex factors are resulting in massive outmigration of Black residents from Bayview, just as the area is being cleaned and greened. I need to now share my screen. And I don't know whether you can see this.
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. I've started it before. Entire screen, okay.
Now we see your screen.
Is that being shared?
Yes.
Okay, so I will now turn your attention to first how our government intentionally segregated Bayview. As the Great Migration was transforming our nation, San Francisco remade Jim Crow by intentionally creating segregated neighborhoods where few or none existed before. In The Color of Law, Richard Rothstein notes that the segregation in the San Francisco Bay Area is a particularly damning instance of de jure segregation, precisely because of that. This segregation was accomplished through the actions of the U.S. Navy and the city of San Francisco as they created public housing to accommodate wartime workers. This demographic pattern hardened as the Homeowners Loan Corporation redlined Hunters Point and as the Federal Housing Administration and U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs denied African Americans home ownership in most suburbs. Over a 30-year period, the federal government issued $120 billion in home loans, 98% of which went to white Americans. This segregation and concentration of Black residents in Bayview magnified when the Western Addition in the Fillmore area, which also had been redlined, because of the presence of Black residents, underwent a devastating transformation. At the time, a thriving cultural center for the city's Black residents and businesses, the Western Addition and Fillmore, along with other urban areas in the rest of the nation considered, quote, slums, were demolished for development funding under the federal 1949 Housing Act, for then the largest redevelopment project on the West Coast. In the process, over 4,700 households and tens of thousands of people were expelled from their homes through eminent domain with little advance notice. Of the 900 businesses that were shuttered, 600 were reportedly Black-owned. The displaced were given largely meaningless vouchers to return, largely meaningless because housing largely failed to materialize at the end of the decades-long and, by the way, failed redevelopment process. Most of the displaced had to find homes elsewhere, many of them in Bayview, but in other polluted places outside of the city, such as Antioch, Vallejo, West Oakland, and Stockton. This demographic in Bayview, however, has shifted dramatically since 1970. Residents in this historically Black neighborhood, including those displaced in urban removal, are again facing displacement or are being displaced. A confluence of factors contributes to this displacement, among them the closure of the shipyard in 1994, where many Black residents worked, the subprime lending, as you've heard about, the crisis of the late 2000s, and the predatory lending practices targeting Black residents in Bayview, which resulted in high foreclosure rates. Further intensifying the economic pressure in a city where a family of 4 earning about $117,000 is considered low income, Bayview is noticeably gentrifying. The city of San Francisco is again in the midst of redevelopment, the largest in the city's modern history, envisioning creating a massive mini city within the city in Bayview at what was formerly Candlestick Park and the Naval Shipyard, as well as one of the shuttered power plant sites. When many are living 200% below the federal poverty level, the median value of owner-occupied units in Bayview is nearly $930,000. Home ownership was once high in Bayview for Black residents, but as the area gentrifies, the next generation can no longer afford to live in the houses where their grandparents and parents built their lives and built a community. At the same time, the shuttering of the power plants also opened up green space, and the new developments in the works will dot the area with new parks and bayside trails. Here, 20th century structural racism, redlining, and expulsive rezoning or zoning is meeting 21st century structural racism. As the neighborhood is being cleaned up, the Bayview residents who were historically exposed to pollution and fought against it will not get to enjoy the fruits of their labors. As the area is greening, Black residents are 15% of Bayview, according to some 10%, based on the latest data available. This marks a massive outmigration, down from 72%. To give you a quick sense of the environmental injustice, let's turn to a measure of inequity based on the pollution burdens and socioeconomic factors. And this is a tool developed by the state of California called Cal EnviroScreen. Because the data is based on post-1970 information, it doesn't exactly capture the environmental pollution that Bayview residents experienced when the Black population was at its highest, but it gives you a sense. As you see, Bayview ranks among the most impacted in the state. The census districts or tracts score between 85 or 85th to 95th percentile, which means that the burden in Bayview is higher than 85 to 95% of all the census tracts in California. Here's the detail from Cal EnviroScreen for one of the census tracts in Bayview. Diesel pollution, which the state recognizes as the biggest cause of cancer, is in the 99th percentile. Asthma, which is recognized as contributing to school absenteeism, is at the 98th percentile. In the interest of accuracy, I note that the percentile here, however, isn't for childhood asthma, but childhood asthma is one of the highest in Bayview in the state. On average, Bayview residents live 14 fewer years than the residents in the wealthier Russian Hill neighborhood, according to the city of San Francisco itself. These indices don't surprise the residents at all. They know about the 2 power plants that had operated in the city for decades, the only 2, in fact, in the city. They know about the radioactive contamination at the Naval Shipyard that attests to the nation's nuclear past that still hasn't been cleaned up, myriad sources of deadly pollution, of deadly particulate matter and diesel that deeply lodge in their lungs. They know about the sewage outflows or overflows and lack of amenities such as access to healthy foods and quality parks and recreation space. In addition to inequities in housing and policing. What Bayview residents know is recognized by public health experts. Where you live determines how long and how well you live. Furthermore, displaced people suffer a range of health harms, including mental health harms and dying younger. Other impacts include loss of culture, sense of place, community, and neighborhood resilience. So here's where we are. As some Bayview residents poignantly describe, the displaced and the soon-to-be displaced have simply served as human filters for pollution, carrying with them body burdens of pollution. In concluding, I want to share with you my observation after decades of fighting alongside communities of color in these struggles against environmental injustice. Just as the wrong done to the displaced of Bayview cannot be redressed with solutions tinkering at the edges of environmental law and policy, addressing the structural racism that undergirds the pollution burdens requires systemic solutions that this task force is about to recommend. And so I thank you.